Have you ever prayed for a long time, with all your heart, telling God everything that lives inside you, and then afterward, all that remained was silence? No sign, no answer, just the feeling that your prayers fell into empty space. If you are waiting for God to speak, but all you hear is silence, this video is for you. The silence of God is unlike any other silence, because when God is silent, you don't just feel alone. You begin to question yourself. Did I pray the wrong way? Am I not good enough? Is God listening, but choosing not to respond? You look around and see others moving forward. Their lives seem to have answers, direction, and light, and you remain still. You keep praying, you keep believing, but you hear nothing. That silence is not loud, but it is heavy. It wearies your heart in a way that is hard to put into words. The silence of God is unlike any other silence, because when God is silent, you don't just feel alone. You begin to question yourself. Did I pray the wrong way? Am I not good enough? Is God listening, but choosing not to respond? You look around and see others moving forward. Their lives seem to have answers, direction, and light, and you remain still. You keep praying, you keep believing, but you hear nothing. That silence is not loud, but it is heavy. It wearies your heart in a way that is hard to put into words. When God is silent, it does not mean He is doing nothing. Very often, silence is where God is working most deeply. In the silence, other noises begin to fade. Hasty expectations, easy answers, the things you once clung to for a sense of security. God does not rush to answer, not because He is indifferent, but because an answer given too early could cause you to stop too soon. There are things, if God spoke them right now, you would not yet have the strength to carry. There are paths, if revealed too early, you would step onto before your heart is ready. In silence, faith no longer rests on emotion. It begins to take root more deeply, more quietly, but more firmly. God's silence is not punishment, and it is not rejection. Sometimes it is protection, because if God answered right now, what you receive might wound you more than heal you. There are doors that, if opened too early, would lead you into places where you are not yet strong enough to stand. There are truths that, if understood too soon, would cost you the humility you still need. God is not silent to test you. He is silent to guard you, so that you do not move forward driven by impatience, but by maturity formed from within. If you are living in God's silence right now, it does not mean He has left you. Silence is not the same as absence, and waiting does not mean being forgotten. There are moments when God is very near, but He does not speak, so you can learn to recognize Him, not only through answers, but through presence. That silence is not pulling you away from faith. It is inviting you to go deeper, to move slower, and to trust more, even when nothing is yet clear. If today you have not heard an answer, it does not mean an answer will never come. There are seasons in our faith when we stop asking God the big questions. We no longer ask why. We no longer ask when. We no longer ask what will happen next. Not because we understand everything, but because we are tired. Tired of praying for so long and hearing nothing. Tired of hoping again and again, only to put that hope away. Tired of trying to believe that this silence has meaning, while our hearts feel increasingly empty. Perhaps no one really prepared us for seasons like this. When we first come to faith, we are often told about joy, about peace, about prayers being answered. Very few people talk about the months when you pray in silence. Very few people talk about the evenings when you kneel down, but there are no words left inside you. And even fewer people tell you that this does not make you a weak believer. God's silence is not unfamiliar in Scripture, but when it happens in our own lives, it is still incredibly hard to accept. Because as humans, we are used to feedback, used to signals, used to knowing whether we are doing something right or wrong. Silence gives us none of that. It does not tell you that you are right. It does not tell you that you are wrong. It simply remains quiet, unexplained. And that is what unsettles us. There are days when you are no longer angry with God. You no longer complain. You just feel empty. You read the Bible, but the words no longer reach your heart the way they used to. You listen to other people's testimonies, and instead of feeling encouraged, you find yourself wondering why it hasn't happened for you. You are not jealous. You are just sad. Sad because it feels like you've been left behind. Sad because you don't understand what God is doing with your life. Sad because you don't know how much longer this waiting will last. Some people, in this season, begin to doubt themselves. They wonder if they have prayed enough, if they have done something wrong without realizing it, if there is something in their heart blocking God. And when they cannot find answers, they begin to doubt their faith itself. But there is a truth that is rarely spoken, that sometimes God does not answer, not because you are doing something wrong, but because He is doing something else. Something else does not mean something small. It does not mean something insignificant. It simply means something that cannot be put into words. There are things God can only do in silence. Not because He cannot speak, but because if He did, we would stop listening. In silence, the deeper motives of our hearts begin to surface. We start to realize why we are seeking God: for comfort, for answers, for outcomes, or for Him alone. This is hard to face, because none of us likes having those motives exposed. But this is where faith begins to mature. Early faith is often emotional. It is fed by powerful experiences, answered prayers, moments when God feels very close. But mature faith no longer depends on those things. It learns how to stand, even when there is no emotional support. Not because God has withdrawn, but because He is inviting us into a deeper relationship. A relationship not built only on what we receive, but on the choice to remain. To remain when nothing is clear. To remain when there are no specific promises. To remain when there are no signs that things will change soon. This is where many people walk away, not because they don't believe in God, but because they cannot bear the uncertainty. We like control. We like knowing where we are going. We like timelines. God's silence takes all of that away, and that is why it makes us feel fragile. But there is a paradox in the life of faith. It is in this very fragility that God is doing His most lasting work. When you stop relying on emotion, you begin to rely on presence. When you stop relying on answers, you begin to rely on trust. This does not happen overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, and sometimes you only recognize it when you look back. You realize that something has changed. Not your circumstances, but the person inside you. You are no longer as panicked as before, no longer overwhelmed every time God is silent. You still hope, but hope no longer controls you completely. This is maturity. Not loud, not dramatic, but very real. Perhaps God is not silent to test you. He is silent to protect you from things you are not yet strong enough to carry. Some answers, if they came too early, would cause misunderstanding. Some doors, if opened too quickly, would lead you into places you are not ready to stand. Silence is sometimes God's way of saying, stay a little longer. Not because He doesn't care, but because He cares deeply. And if today you are in that waiting season, I want you to know this. You are not forgotten. You are not on the wrong path. And this silence is not the end of your story. It is simply a very quiet chapter, a chapter with little dialogue, but one that shapes so much. You do not need to be stronger. You do not need to pray better. You do not need to do more to get God's attention. Perhaps the only thing you are being invited to do in this season is to remain with unanswered questions, to remain with your own vulnerability, to remain with God even when He has not yet spoken. Because there are things God does not say with words. He says them by staying with you in the silence itself. If right now you feel weary from waiting, please do not walk away. If God's silence has left you confused, do not believe that you have been forgotten. Sometimes, what God desires is not that you understand everything, but that you remain. Even when there is no answer yet, you are not forgotten. And this silence is not the end.